And welcome everyone to Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. Thank you for attending, and we hope you're having a great conference. I'd like to introduce you Karoliina Kettuk. Karoliina will be presenting a session titled Utilizing Change Agents in Teams User Adoption, a successful case story. Take it away, Karoliina.
Okay, awesome. Oh, you have a cat in there.
Yeah.
That's cute. Okay, but welcome everyone. It's 1 o'clock here in Finland, so let's start. So my session today will be about champions in Teams user adoption. And of course, my name is Karoliina Kettuk. Before we begin, thank you to all of our sponsors, of course. And 10% of the funds from sponsors go to supporting community release. And if you still haven't taken part of the raffle, you can do it, for example, after my session. But first, some words about me. So my name is Karoliina, and I'm from Finland. I work as a senior consultant in a company called Sulava. And I do better teamwork, and I like to make teamwork, for example, management work and project work better with the help of Teams and other Office 365 tools. And I like to be very active in LinkedIn and in Twitter, so please, you can add me as a contact in there. But before we begin, this is quite a fun story because, as you may see, if you see my video, I don't know, I'm not at home at the moment. I'm actually in an island and I'm having my summer holiday in a lighthouse island called Isokari. And here are my sheep. They are 21 of sheep in here, and I'm actually herding sheep at the moment. But of course, we have 4G everywhere here in Finland, so this presentation is going to be just all right. Awesome. But let's begin. So this presentation is all about compiling a champion network or a change agent network in your organization. And first of all, I thought that maybe we should talk a little bit about who are the champions. So I'm not going to sing the song, no. But what do we mean by champions? Because we also have lots of different names for the champions. For example, we can call them change agents. I like to use that word because they are really agents that do some kind of change in their organization. We can, of course, call them peer support. I asked in Twitter, and someone said we can also call them community, which I like a lot. But for example, Microsoft uses the champions term. So here in my presentation, I will mostly use champions and change agents. But they are a peer support network inside your organization that will help their own teams, their own units. They can help, for example, with Teams adoption, as in this customer case, but you can also utilize your champions network in many other change projects in your organization. For example, if you have some other system you're going to take in use, or if you have some other huge changes going on. So basically, champions are just normal people with maybe some more training, and they are very eager to help their own team to become better or make teamwork a better place. This story right here is a real customer case I did last year. And I live in Finland. It's this small country right there in the north. And I live in Helsinki, and Helsinki is the capital of Finland. We have about 650,000 people living in Helsinki, and about total 5.5 million people living in Finland. So the city of Helsinki was my customer in this case, and it was the culture and leisure section of the city of Helsinki. So they have about 2,000 employees all around the city, like all different swimming halls, youth work facilities, opera house, libraries, etc. So very different work, very not so much knowledge workers, but lots of field workers all around the city doing anything but sitting in front of your computer the whole day. So very diversified environment. But what I actually love about Helsinki is that they have a very strong digital strategy. And they really want to become very digital in many, many ways. And this Office 365 adoption was one of those things they really want to emphasize. And actually one of the things in their strategy is that they want also to be the most functional city in the world. And I also think that giving the tools to the employees that they can be modern, do modern knowledge work is important. And as I said, they have really strong digitalization strategy. And actually, I'm really proud of the city of Helsinki in here because it's one of the rare companies that I've seen that they really have taken their strategy into action. So digitalization is not just a fancy term they are using in their papers, but it's really active and live in their everyday working routines. And also in this case, we had very active collaboration between the IT department, HR department, and from the managerial side. So even though we are talking about Office 365 and Teams, it's not just about IT. It's more about HR. It's more about everyday new skills to the employees. So our project was basically, it started as a technical project. And it actually started in a bit of a funny way because a little more than a year ago, in February 2019, the city of Helsinki gave licenses, so Office 365 licenses, to all of their employees. And then this culture and leisure section in Helsinki started thinking that what are we going to do with all of these licenses? Like, I mean, we had never been in the cloud. We don't know what Teams means, but we have these licenses. So we maybe have to do something with those. And then they called me and we started thinking, but what are we going to do with Teams and other Office 365 tools? So they have licenses. They still are ongoing with the Exchange migration. So for example, all of the employees don't have their emails on the cloud. And that means that they don't have, for example, calendar in their Teams, or they can't use to do. So small things still ongoing, but basically every employee are able to use Teams, for example, from their computers or from their mobile phones. And luckily, we had super active and super great project owners for this one. So Päivi Lassila and Miikka Auer were the people from the Helsinki culture and leisure section side that were running this project. And actually, they also did an awesome job because they gave about 150 different technical teams, trainings, support sessions, support calls, etc., for all of the employees in their whole unit. So basically, nearly every single employee in their unit got some kind of Teams training. Okay, but let's go deeper into the Champions Network. So right in the beginning, we started thinking that because we are 2,000 employees and we do such a different jobs. So we have orchestra, we have youth work, we have museums, libraries, very, very different work styles. So we are not able as a consultant or as a project managers to tell everyone that how you should do your work, because we don't know, they know themselves, the people. So right in the beginning, we started thinking that we need some kind of champions network to run this project with us. So we started gathering champions, and already in the first round in January last year, we got 60 very eager champions with us. And the picture right here in the left-hand side is from one of our kickoffs. And you can see there are about 60% in there already. We also gave some deeper trainings to our champions. So of course they could take part in our normal teams trainings we gave to the employees, but we also wanted to give some more deeper knowledge to our champions. For example, about OneNote or Planner, etc. And then the most important thing I want to emphasize in here is that our champions had a certain duty. And the duty actually was to go into their teams and to go into their units and have these modern knowledge work workshops where they sat down together and agreed on some teamwork basic rules. And that was actually the most important thing the champions did last year. And in the next slides and in the next 40 minutes, I will go through in more deeper side of all of these different trainings and kickoffs and workshops we had with the champions. But of course, in the end of the year, we like to celebrate because everyone loves cake. So we had a end of the year celebration, and you can see the cake also in here. And actually this other picture in the right hand side, I know it's in Finnish, but it says everyone on the same team. And then it says teams and information flows quickly. So they had like 4 of these different kind of posters, and they put them on elevators and office walls, etc. And they were a really cool and fun way also to advertise teams and advertise this champions network. Okay, but first step, you of course want to have your network and you have to gather your champions. And I've done this kind of champions network projects, quite a few, and always we have the same few questions. So how many champions do we need? Where should I gather my champions? And should maybe some manager nominate some champions for us, or should the champions be volunteers? And of course, it depends. But I would say some general guidelines. So in this case, we had about 60 champions, and it's about 2 or 3 champions per 100 employees. So that's some good guideline you can use, or maybe having 1 champion in every unit or in every team, if you have big teams, or in every for example, country or from every shop. So, but I don't think how many is the most important question, because we also ask a lot of, what if I don't get champions from every unit? What happens if I don't get champions from every team? And I would say it doesn't matter in the beginning, because you can take what you get from the first search round, and then you can grow your champions network later on. Because in the discussion between should we have nominated champions or volunteers, I would strongly suggest having only volunteers, because we've done both. In this project, they were only volunteers and it worked perfectly. But I've also done projects where the champions have been nominated, and then there's always some kind of commitment missing. If your manager says that, hey, you have this new work duty, you have to be a champion. So it doesn't work the same way. So I would just suggest that only have volunteers as your champions. And if you get, for example, 20 in the first round, it's okay. You can work with the 20 and then grow your network a little bit later on. It's not the quantity, it's the quality, I would say. And then the second question I get asked a lot is what's required from a champion? So do we want to have some kind of specific titles or specific things we need from a champion? And I think the most important thing for a champion is to be eager, is to be willing, is to be volunteer, of course, but they want to help others. They want to share information. They want to communicate openly with their team, and they have some kind of very eager will to develop their teamwork, whether inside their own team or, for example, make better communication within or across another teams or another countries. So they have this developing attitude from the beginning. Another thing we also talk about is whether champions have to be champions in IT. And this is one thing I really don't like using the champion word, because sometimes the champion word will sound that you have to be super good at what you are doing. And that's not the case, because we don't require excellent IT skills from the champion, because you can always train teams. You can always train OneNote to your champions. The good attitude is much more important than superb IT skills. And then the third question that's asked a lot is that what's in it for me as a champion? So why would I want to waste or use my working time in these champion duties? And this is actually also important because being a champion takes time. So I would say it's about half a day in a week, so 3 to 4 hours per week when the project is ongoing, so when it's the most active. So it's about 1 to 2 days per month. And that's always away from some of your real work duties. And that's a discussion you have to have with yourself and also with your manager, that am I able to use these hours in the champion duties? And what do I gain from that? So I've talked about with the champions, and actually these are insights I've gotten from champions in this project. And they have told that 3 important things they have gained from being in this champions network. And the first one is being able to network across your own team, across your own unit. Because usually you are just working with your own team, so working with 5 people or maybe 20 people in a day. But being a champion offers trainings, offers workshops, offers possibilities to be able to communicate, discuss, share information across your own small team. And that has been very important for the champions. The other thing is that you also gain some more deeper knowledge. So you gain more specific trainings, you gain more knowledge, for example, about the new features that are coming to Teams, or about some applications in Teams or in Office 365. So you get some special training, some special education that might be good for you, also in other duties as your champion duties. And actually the last one, I think it's super awesome thing that one champion said in one training, that because usually, for example, in this customer case, the champions in their normal working days, they are, for example, cashiers in a swimming hall, or they play violin in an orchestra. So their work has nothing to do with computers or Office 365. So they actually gain a valuable information, they gain valuable knowledge about how to do modern knowledge work, and they gain insights they can utilize, for example, in their hobby groups or outside their own work duties. So they really have the feeling that they are growing also as a modern knowledge work experts. Okay, so as I told you, we gave the champions some specific and extra training. And all in all, when we are adopting teams in our organization, I think it's super important to get everyone on the same basic technical baseline. And we Usually we do these things that we have like 5 or 6 basic Teams trainings where we go through some basic buttons in Teams, how to chat, how to have meetings in Teams. And then we already move on to more deeper stuff. But IT skills in companies are very, very different. And I think it's very important to get everyone on the same basic level so that everyone knows the best practices, not just what buttons you need to push, but you have to know the best practices. For example, in communication in Teams, or for file management in Teams, or for example, if we have a knowledge, I have piece of information I want to share with my team. Am I going to use email? Am I going to use WhatsApp? Am I going to use Teams, etc.? So the best practices should be always same for all of the employees. And after everyone are on the same level, we can dive a bit deeper. And in this case, and that's also what I like to do in general, we gave this purpose first trainings. So we didn't train planner and we didn't train forms, but instead we trained the purpose and the best practices. So better meetings. That also, of course, includes Teams. It can include also OneNote, Planner, etc. Or we can train how you can manage your personal work. And that can include some technical stuff. It can, for example, include OneDrive, OneNote to do, but also, for example, it can include how you can manage your notification settings in Teams, or how you can work with your mobile phone. And I think this is also a good point to have in any Teams adoption project, that you have first these very basic technical trainings, and when you're diving deeper, you maybe forget about the products or the technical part, and you take the purpose and the best practices into action. And then with these champions, we had about 6 or 5 those kind of deeper trainings in 1 year, last year. And then in addition, we had this weekly or bi-weekly calls. So it was an open Teams call where everyone could attend. And maybe we told them about some new features that are coming to Teams, or then, for example, had some summaries or recaps, for example, from our forms training. And I have some quotes in this slide as well, and these quotes are all from the champions in this project. And actually, this quote about the notifications, I think this is super important to know, because notification settings is very basic usage of Teams, and it belongs to the very basic technical trainings in Teams. But also it's something that many people tend to forget, and then they are acting like, oh my God, I have so many notifications. Teams sucks because I can't keep up with everything. But it's just you have to sit down, go through the notification settings yourself, and then you're good to go. So we have to start from the very basic, even with the champions. Okay, and alongside with the trainings, we had quite a lot of support for our champions. So we had this modern work site in SharePoint. As you can see, it's in Finnish, but it doesn't really matter. So we had gathered all of our best practices in this one SharePoint site, which was open to everyone. And then we had these one-on-one discussions with the supervisors, because as I said, being a champion takes some time. And that's a discussion you have to have with your manager or with your supervisor. And actually, Päivi and Mika in here, you can see their pictures in there. They had these one-on-one discussions with every supervisor, with every champion. And they have also this nice thing in the end. So after the discussion, they gave some team swag to the manager. So everyone was happy in the end. And of course, it's good to acknowledge that when you have an active network and you have an active owner for your active network, the support may personify to the owners of the network. And in this case, Päivi and Mika, they got tons of questions directly from the champions. But actually, also we had this another way of supporting the champions, which is an open support group. And what Päivi and Mika also did here was that if they got a question from email, they would maybe answer that, hey, this is a good question. Shall we continue this discussion in our support group? And the support group and the support calls were very popular amongst the champions, because of course you are maybe not able to attend to every training or every session, but you can attend from time to time. And if you have any question, you can always go to the support group and write your question there. So this is an example of a support group in Teams. You could also have this in Yammer if you have a large company, like more than 10,000 users, because the limit for one group is 10,000 people at the moment. And this was actually an open support group for all of the employees in the culture and leisure section. So open group for all of the employees in the company. And actually, there wasn't only just the project owners and me who were answering to the questions and writing posts in this group. But the purpose right from the beginning was that the champions actually would answer to the questions they were asking, and we would maybe give some information about trainings, etc., or share some best practices. So very quickly, about just in a few weeks, it became that the project owners didn't need to be present in the group all the time, because there were already so many active champions that were answering to the questions and writing posts. And this is an example how you can, for example, divide your support group. That you can have the general channel for the general information, for new features, etc. And one tip I've also used, not in this case, but in some other cases, that you can schedule the trainings as channel meetings. So then the context of your training, for example, Teams training, will always stay on the channel. Then you can have a separate place for the questions so that the trainings and the important information isn't going to get lost along with all the questions that people ask. And at first, it may seem that they don't ask really that many questions, but when time passes, you can see that they will notice that it's a very good place to have to get answers rather quickly. And then one thing I also liked is that you can have a separate channel for your best practices. And you can, for example, have the champions to write in the best practices channel, for example, just once a week. That hi, we used Planner for this kind of purpose, and it worked really well. Or maybe you have some not so good examples. For example, we tried to use Teams live event, but it didn't work. This was off. So you can also share what you should have maybe done differently. But it's also a nice place to have an open channel for everyone to tell what they have succeeded in. And of course, your champions, your change agents, they need a separate place for themselves to discuss. And you can have a separate team if you want to, or you can also just use a private channel in your team. Just one thing you may want to consider, because if you use a private channel for the champions, you can't have a planner for your change agents. And having this yearly plan where you have all of your trainings, all of your workshops for the champions is super important. So you may want to think about whether you can have a separate team for the champions instead of the private channel. Okay, so this is, I think, the most important thing the champions did last year. And this is also something that succeeded super great. And I was actually a bit surprised that it went so well, because we had this concept that we are not, as the project owners or as me as a consultant, I'm not the expert on the everyday working life the champions are living in their own teams and in their own units. The champions themselves are the experts in their work. And of course, in our project, we had some general guidelines, general best practices, how should you use teams, or what kind of rules do you have for document management. But we wanted the teams to be able to take responsibility and also have the freedom to decide things for themselves. And then we had this modern knowledge work workshop concept. And actually it was basically just this train the trainer model, where we took the champions. We had a few workshops with them. First of all, we designed these modern knowledge work workshops. For example, we did all the materials together. We did the agenda together. We did the invitations together. And we also discussed quite a bit that are we going to really call these workshops? Because workshop for some of the employees sounded a bit scary. And that's why also some of the teams, they had discussions instead of workshops. And that was totally okay. Then we also had some workshops where we went through how can you facilitate a workshop? Because as you may remember, the employees or the champions here, they were cashiers or library workers. So they were not familiar maybe for a facilitation methods. So we also trained the champions on that. And then the champions went to their own teams and to their own units, and they had these workshops or discussions. And basically they sat down together with the whole team, if possible. And we had the agenda, we had the materials, but they were also able to modify those as they wished. The only goal for the workshop was to have some sort of agreement on the teamwork rules. For example, what means if I like your post? What means if I give a heart to your post? So reactions in teams. When should I mention you? When should I mention a whole channel? So very basic teamwork rules. But the emphasis in here was so big because the team made up the rules themselves. So it wasn't some consultant like me who came and stood in front of the audience and said that this is how we are going to do this. But instead the team sat down together and they actually committed to the rules themselves. And that's why I think it succeeded so well. And this is a great topic on its own, and I could talk about this for an hour. And I have a session about this workshop model in ComSource. So it's in July, in about a month. So welcome there. It's also an online conference if you want to know more about this modern knowledge work workshop model. But it was really great. And also a quote also from one of our champions. So basically, they created this rule of playbook for their team. And they could use a PowerPoint, as you saw in the previous slide, or take it, for example, if they had a flipboard, they could use this pen and paper, or some kind of common agreement how to use the basic functionalities in team together as a team. Okay, But of course, the champions did lots of other things than those teamwork workshops. And everyone, of course, worked from within their own interests, from their own skills, from their own how much they can use working time for this one. And one important thing for, of course, the peer support. They did it lots of live. Of course, nowadays maybe more online, and lots of this online support was answering to the questions in the open support group in Teams. But also, this is actually interesting because I didn't think about this earlier. So the champions actually had a huge part in communicating about Teams adoption and all Teams trainings, etc. Because the common situation is that, for example, if you work in communications department, and then you write a piece of news to your internet, and then you think that everyone goes to the internet and everyone will read your news. And of course, they don't do that. So in this case, the champions communicated about our Teams trainings, communicated about, for example, new features in Teams, etc. And that was very important part and very took away much pressure from our project team, because the champions could share the information and it was not only reliable on what our project team did. And that was important also in this case. And then the developing teamwork, collaboration, communication, and they did those workshops what they think that was best for them. So they didn't have to follow the same rules or same materials as everyone else. They could really utilize those parts that was the most important for just their team or in just their unit. And this is actually, this picture is another poster, and it says everyone in the same team, and Teams makes staying in touch much easier. Okay, so here are a few examples that the champions did last year in their teams. So in this left-hand side, we have a picture of our music house in Helsinki. And this is actually a super nice thing because the city orchestra, they had this Teams committee. And the city orchestra Teams committee had a Teams president. And then they were thinking about the change from their own perspective, from the orchestra perspective. And the president led the shift from emails to Teams, etc. So they really modified the workshop model in their own needs. And then the picture here on the right is Oodi. It's the new central library in Helsinki. It also, I think it got some best library in the world prize last year, which is just awesome. And actually the champions invented that all of the libraries in Finland, in Helsinki, should have a team together. So previously, the libraries had separate teams based on their location in Helsinki, but now they also have a one single team for all of the libraries, so they can share information and share ideas across all of the libraries in Helsinki. And that's also amazing, because they didn't have anything likewise they could utilize before. And then the third picture in here, where you have the statue and the forms in your mobile screen. So they actually, some of the champions invented that they have these tours that they have to go around in Helsinki and see if the statues are okay. So if there is something they have to repair or whatever. And usually they have done this with pen and paper, but then they did these forums. So super simple forums questionnaire. Now the employees in the park department can just have the forms and then go around in the parks and see all the statues and just fill the form. And that's also an initiative that came from a champion. So there are lots of possibilities. You can develop your working style, or you can develop your teamwork it's not just always about how to have better meetings in teams, because not all of the work is knowledge work. And this statue example, I think it's a great way how you can develop your work as a champion and really do something useful with Office 365 tools, even if you are a field worker or a first-line worker. Okay, and the time usage really has, I would say it hasn't been an issue, but it has been something that has come up in this project and also in several other champions projects I've done. And that's really something you have to discuss with your manager, and also not just giving a time from your manager, but also reserving time in your own calendar, because you know you have to, as a champion, you have to attend some trainings. You have to have time to plan for your workshops. You have to have time to give those workshops or facilitate those workshops. So also you have to be able to reserve time in your own calendar for the support and live support, online support, etc. Okay, so those were basically the things we did with the culture and the leisure section in the city of Helsinki last year. And now this year, of course, the project has gone forward. And one thing they did already in this winter was that they automated the whole search of the champions. So previously they had these forums and then they had this Excel and everything was super manual work. But nowadays they actually did, and they did themselves. So I didn't do it. So I'm also super proud of the customer because they did this totally themselves. So they created this simple Power Automate together with forms, and they have all of this approval process. When a new champion wants to join the network, the approval flow will send, for example, approval paths to the manager of the champion. So they have to accept, approve, or decline the request. And they also have this automatically updated list of all of the champions in their support site. So in the SharePoint site I showed you earlier. So the whole process is now automated. And if you are working in some team or in some unit, you can always go to the SharePoint site, and there you can always see that, hey, who is the closest champion in our unit? So you can go directly to talk with him or her. And then the next thing they also are doing in this project is to take the best practices they have now gathered from this champions network, and they want to have a whole citywide network. And the picture from here is actually taken in March this year, so just before these interesting times. And in this picture, they have champions from the culture and leisure section in the city of Helsinki, but also champions from a few other sections in Helsinki. So they are now gathering a citywide network to help Teams adoption in whole of the city in Helsinki. And that's awesome to just spread the best practices. Okay, and even though this has been a success story, so everything has worked, I would say, surprisingly well. But there are some challenges. And now if you want to gather a champions network, or you want to launch a champions network in your own company, there are some things you might want to consider. And the first thing is that champions may be at first very enthusiastic, and then it will fade away, and then they will lose interest. But of course, it's not a problem if you have an active owner for the network. And for example, in this customer case, the network owners were super active. They planned the whole champions year in ahead. And of course, they did the same now in 2020. So if you have an active owner, if you have an active plan that we are going to have these kind of trainings, these kind of support sessions, these kind of workshops. So you know when you have to be active, and you also know how much time you need, for example, in May, or how much time you need in September in your year. And the second challenge might be the supervisors. So it helps if you have the yearly plan, because then you know how much time the champions need. I would say the general guideline is about half a day in a week, but of course it differs pretty much how active you are, how big your team is, etc. But you really want to show the what's in it for me. Why should I, as a manager, let my employees become champions? What's in it for our team? And then having these one-on-one discussions with the champions, with the managers, is always a good thing to get the approval, so that the champions can work and use their working time in the champions' duties as well. And then the third challenge, maybe I wouldn't say the challenge, but it is something you really have to consider, is that the IT skills are very, very different. But that's not a problem if you have the technical trainings, if you get everyone in the same basic level first, and then you offer lots of support. So you offer online support, you have the online support group, or for example, weekly calls where everyone can come and ask questions. So there are challenges when we are thinking about a champion network, but nothing you really can't overcome. And actually, this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. This is also from a champion in this project. And when we are thinking about time usage, so you hear this quite a lot, that I don't have time to learn these new tools. I'm so busy, I don't have time to learn how to use Teams. But actually, if you succeed, Teams will actually make more time in your working days, because all of your conversations will be in one place. All of your documents will be in one place. So you don't have to use or waste your time in finding pieces of information in different systems, from your email, from somebody else's network storage drive, etc. So in the end, actually this champion said that Teams had made our jobs easier and given more time to our working days. And I think that's super, super awesome. Okay, we are nearly finished. And this is actually my Change Agent network cheat sheet. And of course, you have the slides. I will share them in SlideShare later on. And I have also a blank version of this without the virtual marathon map around here. So if you want to utilize this in some of your projects, just feel free. But this is also just a summarize of what you should consider when you are launching your Change Agent network. So gathering your network, take only those who volunteer. You can always expand later on. Have an active support. So utilize the support group and wait for the champions to start answering the questions in your group. Also utilize the train-the-trainer model. As we did in here, we utilized the model to have these modern knowledge work workshops, and they were amazing. And of course, as always, sharing is caring, as I like to always say. So share the best practices, be an example, and make sure that the champions are also examples in their own teams and in their own units. And always celebrate success, have cake or use praise or whatever. And one super simple, super nice thing is to have some kind of swag. It can be stickers, it can be Teams hats, Teams socks, whatever you have, or just a GIF in Teams. You can send a nice GIF to someone in Teams. But have something small to celebrate your success. And then, of course, know your own challenges, whether it's the management support or the time usage or what's your pain point, and know how to overcome your pain points. Okay, now my time is up. I'm super happy to give this presentation for all you today. And if you have any questions, I can answer those. And you'll also find me in Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karoliina. And we have a few questions here. Actually, Andrew van den Berg from Netherlands is giving regards. And anonymous guy is asking, did you record your training meetings? I'm not actually sure if he is talking about your personal trainings or the very session.
Yeah, of course, this session right here is going to YouTube, but always we get the question that should we record our trainings, for example, Teams trainings or Teams workshops. And yes, you can record those, but the problem is that really rarely people will actually watch them later on. So you can see if you have your trainings in stream, so they have like 5 to 10 viewers, because it's quite a heavy task to watch a hour-long Teams training afterwards. So you can record trainings, but they might not get that many views afterwards.